Logic actually has one of my favorite features from Pro Tools, but I didn't know about it for years, and I've been using Logic for a few years now, and I've been teaching Logic for a few years now, and if I didn't know about it, I'm guessing you might not know about it as well, or at least how powerful it is. It's called Track Alternatives, and it's something that can give you a lot of flexibility when you're recording and or editing or mixing. Whatever you're doing in Logic, Track Alternatives can be really, really useful tools. So let's jump into Logic and take a look at them. Okay, now you're likely not seeing track alternatives. We'll need to enable them or at least make them visible. To do that, you will right click on any track in your session or just hold Control and click on a track. Go down to Track Header Components and then go all the way to the bottom and make sure Track Alternatives is selected. With that selected, you'll see this little up and down arrow next to the name of every single track in your session. And when you click on it, it's not going to seem like a big deal, but it's super powerful and is going to make making music a lot easier and give you basically a trail that you can follow or a fearlessness that you can have when you're making your edits, when you're doing flex time, flex pitch, because you know that you can always go back to an earlier alternative. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to walk through basically some very simple examples really quickly. I'll walk through a specific example with take folders so you can think through how you might use this when recording something like vocals. I'm also going to show you how you can change one small little setting in your settings that allows you to use this if you want when recording. And then I'll specifically show you how to use it when recording something that has a lot of inputs like drums, where I actually probably prefer the workflow of recording with take or track alternatives over take folders. And I'll show you the settings you change and then some settings you need to enable if you're recording anything that has multiple inputs with track alternatives. Okay, let's start by just looking at how to use it, what it is. I'm just going to record a little audio here. You're not going to hear this because it doesn't actually matter. I just want you to see visually what we can do with track alternatives. So record a little snippet here, and then I can now go and just go to a new region, just completely blank slate, right? But I could always go back. You can see it auto created A and B. So I can go back to A, which is what I just recorded, or I can go up to B. But this can get a little bit more powerful if, let's say, you have A, this is your finished vocal, and you just want to edit it a little bit. You just want to maybe adjust the timing a little bit. You want to do some flex pitch and whatever it is you need to do. Then you could go here and you could duplicate that specific track. It's now called C, and I could go in here and I could fearlessly edit this, whatever I need to do. Maybe I want to delete that, cut these breaths here, whatever. And I can be totally fearless because I know I can always go back to A. And I can rename this. If I want to go up to C here, I can rename this to be edit. And then you know exactly what each of these individual tracks is. So you see how powerful this is just for editing, just for keeping a list of everything that you've done inside your session. Let's talk through how you might use this with take folders, where you record and you get this perfect take where it's all the same part, but you really love it. Let's say you want to try recording just a totally different approach. So you've done, maybe 4 passes and you've come together a good take, but you're like, I want to try this where I'm just singing it maybe a little bit quieter, maybe a little bit harder, whatever it is. You could go up here and go to new, and then we could record and just do a whole pass, do a whole take, and then we could say, okay, let's do one more take and we'll come together between those 2 takes. I think take folders are really, really great for that, right? So now we have our 2 takes here. We can come together, get the perfect performance, whatever. And we can go in here and title this, as opposed to A and B, we could say softer. And A, we could go back and title A, and we could rename it louder. And then you have very clear track alternatives that you know exactly what these are. Once you've decided on, you've comped together your perfect take from whichever one of these you want to use, then you could duplicate your favorite one, whichever one you decide on, duplicate that whole take folder. This is now C, right? And I could flatten and merge this, which makes editing way easier. So we'll flatten and merge. It's just going to take that whole track, condense it down into one take, and it does all the little joining regions and fades and everything like that for you. So now you have a comp, a perfect comp. So we could call this, rename this comp. And then this is our audio, but as opposed to starting to do any additional editing, any flex pitch or anything like that, we can now duplicate this, title this track alternative, rename it tune. I can hit E on the editor, go ahead and bring up, let's say, turn on flex pitch here. I can tune the vocals however I want to tune them. And then once I'm done tuning, I can duplicate this track yet again. I can then bounce this in place, and we can hit replace track, and we can change this to be titled Vox 1 tuned. It's going to go through and bounce all of my flex pitch editing right onto this same track, but now on a new track alternative. So now I don't have flex pitch enabled in the same way. It's not using that computer processing. So we can have our final tune vocal here where we're not using flex pitch. It's not using the CPU. It's not doing the weird kind of timing related stuff that flex pitch can have. We can name this tuned. And now we can see we have our comp, then we have the tune, and then we have the tuned, or you call this tuning, and then we have the tuned vocal. And just makes it way easier to always know you can go back and you're not always operating on the same track. I used to do this when I was working around this in Logic. I'd do this by duplicating this track or holding Option and clicking and drag. And then I would tune on this one and I'd title this track and I'd have all these different tracks visually and then I'd hide them. This just does it all within one track for you right here where you can see a clear line from start to finish of everything you've done on this track. So really, really handy. I'll do this definitely with all my vocals in the future. I'll do this with any sort of bass editing. Any editing that I'm doing, I'm going to be using track alternatives for. But it's not just for editing. Let's talk about how you might use this while recording. And this is super cool. But actually, I'm going to interrupt myself here really quickly. If you're watching this, I'm guessing you're working in Logic and you're trying to make your music sound better, and I want to give you something to help with that. I put together a completely free 6-step checklist that goes through the 6 steps that all professional mixers have and how to do it inside Logic. Hundreds, thousands, actually probably tens of thousands of people now have downloaded this guide. I get emails all the time about how helpful it is, and it's completely free. So be sure to pick it up from the link in the description below. But let's go and jump back into it. Okay, so when recording, if we change one of our options in the preference settings here, so go to your settings and go to recording, and then under cycle off or cycle on, change from create take folder, which is the default where it's going to put them all into kind of a comping take folder. We can change that to create track alternative and do that on both. And then we can just cycle here. I can record, and every time it loops that recording, as opposed to creating a take folder, it's going to create a track alternative. So you can see these ticking up here, C, D, E. You see what I mean? So now, as opposed to having all these different takes, I just have them all laid out here on track alternatives. Now, you might be thinking, why? I mean, take folders are really great. Well, as we already talked about, if you're really wanting to change total approach, I think this is a great alternative. But in my opinion, it's particularly good for any editing with tracks that have multiple inputs. So drums, if you're recording room mics with something. I like the workflow and the visible nature of track alternatives a lot better than take folders, as opposed to having all those take folders for all the different tracks. I like this a whole ton better. So let me show you how I did this recently when recording drums. This was the first thing I did with this once I was like, I feel like there has to be some sort of playlisting like we had in, as we called it in Pro Tools, in Logic. And once I discovered it, I was like, thank God. So you can see here, I have all these alternatives, and a lot of these are just me just trying different things. And once I landed a part, I think it was around G here, I did a few more takes so I could pull in a few more little ideas or make sure I really had the best takes. Then I comped it together from that G performance. So I duplicated G, have that as a comp, then I quantized that, and then for me, plus is just saying that I merged all the regions together, so it just looks like one continuous drum performance. But if we go back here, you'll see if I go to Comp Q, you'll see all the little edits in there. Okay, let's quickly notice that that only changed my kick drum. So I want to show you a couple different things you need to turn on if you want to record multiple tracks with track alternatives. So, or multiple inputs with track alternatives. So first things first, if you're recording something like drums or again, a vocal with a room mic or a guitar with a room mic, whatever it is, anything that has multiple inputs that are going to be on different tracks, we need to group them together. So to do that, just hit X on your keyboard to bring up the little mixer window here and select your first and your last track while holding Shift. That's going to select all of these tracks, and then we need to turn on a group for them. You can name this up here in this top corner if you want, so we could just call this drums. And then under your groups settings, we need to make sure that editing and track alternatives are both turned on. Now that track alternatives are both turned on, as I flip through my different alternatives, you'll see that it'll be for every single track all together. So it's really easy to move around here with all of our tracks all in one place, seeing it all very visually, nice and easy for all the editing, all the arranging, all that stuff. So in my opinion, it's a little bit cleaner looking than having the take folders with a billion little things. And if the take folders aren't going to behoove you in your editing, then I like the track alternatives a lot better. And it still wasn't hard for me. I just used G, duplicated that to be this comp one, and then I pulled in a few different little sections, and all you have to do that is, like, let's say I wanted to pull from this section of E, I just hold my marquee tool, select from here, hit Command C, then go to my comp and hit Command V, and it pastes from one to the other. So it's really easy to edit between track alternatives, and in my opinion, it's a better visual experience and it's a better editing experience because it makes sense as opposed to the take folders that just look messy and I find harder to work. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Maybe you'll never need to use this multi-input track alternative setup, or it won't be the right thing for you, but either way, I think while editing, while getting your tracks ready to mix, having that little trail of everything you've done is super, super helpful. I'd love to hear from you. Have you heard of track alternatives? Have you used them before? Are there any other tricks that I should know about? Definitely let me know in the comments below. And as I said before, if you don't already have my 6-step checklist to a pro mix, be sure to grab it. It's really going to help you out. It just goes through the 6 steps that all professional mixes have and how to do it specifically inside Logic. Really going to help you out, completely free from the link in the description below. If this video was helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another video.
One thing at a time, I can